In this video, I will try to better explain position fixed. So position fixed is probably the easiest to understand of the positioning values that we can apply through CSS. So very first thing, let's look at what I have on screen so you can understand what I'm doing. To the left, I have an index.html file, which is being rendered here in Chrome. It's very simple. There's an h1, which is just a label for the page, position fixed. Below that, we have a div with a class of wrapper, which contains a couple things. One div with a class of fixed and a whole bunch of content. The content is really there just so that I can have a scrollable screen. So you can more or less ignore this. What we're going to focus on is positioning this element. So let's look at the CSS. So the H1 is text align center and has been made a little bit smaller so that it's right there. Wrapper, class of wrapper, which is this thing here, has a width of 300 pixels and a padding of 50. That's why it's so this from here to about here is 350 pixels of padding all the way around it. Margin of 30 pixels auto, so there's 30 pixels of margin on the top and bottom, and auto centers it up, just says, hey, put as much over here and over here as necessary to make the whole element center on the screen, and it has the light gray background. So you can know that, wrapper is this light gray element. The element with a class of fixed, which is this div, is the red square. So it is a height and width of 100 pixels and a background of red. So we're going to focus on positioning this element. So the thing to understand about position fixed is that when it positions an element, it positions it relative to the viewport of the browser. So if we look at the browser, let's just think about this browser itself. The actual page, the thing we look through to see the document, is this area of the screen. So from the bottom left-hand corner to the bottom right-hand corner to the top right-hand corner to the top left-hand corner, that's our viewport. So the reason why our page can scroll is because the actual document itself is much larger than the viewport. I mean, I can expand this down, and the document, the actual page of the document itself, there's a part of it that I can't see, so I have to scroll down to see more of it. So what's important here to note is that with position fixed, we are now positioning it relative to the viewport and not the document. So let's try that. Let's just do that. We'll say position fixed. And without changing any values, let's just see what that does. So it did not move it, but now all the text decided to flow up behind it. So that's normal behavior, because what it's doing is the document itself basically just pretends like it's not there anymore. So as far as the document is concerned, this box just isn't here anymore. So it's still rendering in its location, but none of the content of the page really cares that it's there, because its location is now determined by the viewport itself. So if we scroll the page, it stays on the screen exactly where it was. So the only reason it's still in this location is because we haven't told it where it should be, so it just doesn't know, so it just stays where it was. But because it's positioned relative to the viewport and not the document itself, when we scroll, it just stays there. The document scrolls by and it stays where it was. So let's change this a little bit more. So let's give this a top value of 0 and a left value of 0. So if we save and reload, now it's all the way in the upper left-hand corner, because top of 0 and left of 0 is saying go all the way to the top and left, which is this top left corner here. So again, we can scroll the page and it just stays where it needs to be. So if we change left to right, think about where it's going to be. Where is this going to go? It's got a top value of 0 and a right value of 0. So where's that going to be? Think about it. Okay, so let's reload the page, and it goes all the way over here. So top of 0, right of 0. And remember, this is all relative to the viewport, the actual sort of like window through which we look to see the page itself. So we can change top to bottom. So now we have a bottom value of 0 and a right value of 0. If we save this, now it's all the way down here. Again, we can scroll the page. And if we change right to left of 0 and reload, it's here. So we can tell this to be wherever we want. We can tell it to be, say, 20 pixels from the bottom and 40 pixels from the left, and it will just go there. Boom. It's great. This is really useful for things like fixed navigation. So let's just see what that might look like. If we wanted this to pretend that this red bar was going to be our navigation and we wanted our site to flow underneath it, we can do that. We can give this a value of left of 0. We'll give it a top of 0. And we will give it a right of 0. And then we'll remove the width value because now we want it to be, as wide as the screen because it's a block level element. So if we reload this, now we have this bar. Let's make this a little shorter, say 40 pixels. Now we have this bar across the top, so all the content of the page will flow behind it. That could be really useful. If we wanted to make this a fixed footer, we could change this to bottom. And now it'll always be on the bottom, so the page will scroll past it. We could have, social media icons here or something like that. It can be really, really useful that way. So that's pretty much it. Just know that when you apply position fixed, what that's saying is it wants it to be positioned relative to the viewport and not to the content of the page anymore.